So I actually feel just as fervently about speech, and I want to pose a question back to you in a second. But when you ask about what is the goal, for me, the number one goal right now is to reclaim our democracy.
Yes.
And so right now, what we have is an oligarchy of the few that have bought almost all of our politicians. And so can we have some reasonable limitations on speech? Well, of course, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater, and every other developed nation does not allow the rampant legalized bribery that we allow. So when you say, well, I mean, I don't mind political ads, well, it depends, doesn't it? Because it is a giant, giant megaphone, and it can drown out all other speech. So that's why I am vigilant about it. So I'll give you an example that I think most of the room can relate to. Washington posted a good story about how the Clintons had raised $3 billion over their careers, okay? They raised it through their foundation, through campaign donations, and actually right into their pockets, okay? Now, people did not give the Clintons $3 billion for their health. They just didn't. They did it to bribe them, okay? And what did And corporations don't give you money out of the goodness of their heart or for charity. They do it for return on investment. And so, and the first time they give to a politician, it's an experiment. The second time they give to a politician, it was a good investment. And that unfortunately describes most of our politicians. So what did the Clintons buy with that $3 billion? They bought a giant megaphone. And yes, Donald Trump overcame it because he got $5 billion in free media in the election cycle. $5 billion, okay? But
I don't know where he's coming up with that $5 billion. I guess they're multiplying the amount of, how much it would cost to buy that advertising that he got from all the major networks and everywhere else out there on social media because they were covering him. But guess what? They decided to cover him. It was these huge corporations that decided to cover him. And they were covering him for what reason? They were thinking he was a joke, and they were getting huge ratings, and they were getting money for their advertising when they were doing that. So they weren't doing it out of the goodness of their heart. And just because they had Trump on there, you can't blame him for getting the benefit of that. They gave him $5 billion. Come on, Sangster. They gave him $5 billion of free advertising. He freaking earned it.
Who did not overcome that megaphone? Every other Democratic contender. They were crushed by that microphone.
Tough.
And the reality is the Clintons shut out the speech of all other people with the bribes that they received. And I cannot abide by it. I cannot abide by it. We need our democracy back. So, and I don't want you to get the wrong idea that I'm just picking on Democrats. Obviously, the Republican Party on the national level is about 99.9% corrupt. They take the money, they do their bidding. They're the most corrupt party in American history. So, but on the issue of speech, so there can be reasonable regulations. Every other developed country does it. But Tucker, for a guy who's as vigilant about protecting speech, I am curious, and again, this is genuine, why you don't support the free speech rights of Colin Kaepernick. That's really funny.
So before Tucker goes on, again, Cenk came on, rants, raves, talks again about, corporations, money, donations. The Clintons raised this amount of money. Trump got this thing type $5 billion, pull something out of the air. Got to go back and take a look how he, came up with that number. He could have made it, $7, $8, $10 billion for whatever we care. And just ranting and raving. And so he's on there for a couple of minutes. And now he throws the question back to Tucker Carlson. Again, I think utilizing strategy, again, sort of like a gotcha question. Hey, what do you think about, you think you're saying you're for free speech for everybody. Anything goes, free speech, whatever galore. But what about Colin Kaepernick? What's your stance on him? How come you don't support his free speech rights? And Tucker's just like going, man, those softballs, keep on throwing them, Cenk. Keep on throwing them softballs. Just keeps hitting them out of the park. Let's see what Tucker has to say in response.
I was just worrying if, Nike pitchmen had enough power in our society. I think he's okay. I've never challenged his speech rights. I mean, ever. I've never challenged anybody's speech rights. I mean, there's not a wacko I wouldn't defend on speech grounds, and I have defended a lot of crazy people on speech grounds, including Colin Kaepernick, who I think is a buffoon. Whatever. I don't think it's that. My problem with Kaepernick relates back to what I was saying earlier about what unites us in our. I mean, it's inherently, to borrow a term from the academic left, problematic to have a ruling class that hates the country it rules. And so you can't actually, you really have to sort of buy into all the hokey patriotic stuff if you're in charge, almost by definition. You really have to. You got to put your hand over your heart and recite the Pledge of Allegiance and the Star Spangled, or think of a new set of whatever, of symbols to honor. If you don't like those, make up new ones. But you have to have those things, or else you can't lead, because you can't lead people you don't care about, actually. Empathy is a prerequisite for leadership. If you don't love your children, they will wind up in rehab. If you're an officer and don't care about the safety of your men, they will die. If you're an employer and you really don't care about your employees, like, your company will fail. I'm not making a touchy-feely point. I'm making a practical one. The people who run the country, who derive the greatest benefit, I'm not simply talking about a political class, I'm talking about a finance class, to name one among a couple examples, the tech oligarchs. These are people who have deep contempt for the population of the country.
Absolutely.
And I'm not even making a moral judgment about that. Like, lots of people have ideas and attitudes I hate, but I'm just saying it doesn't work. You will run the country into the ground unless you really care, and they really don't. And the Kaepernick thing is just, like, so perfect, it's so cynical. If you want to have a conversation about police brutality, I used to be a police reporter. I think it's a super interesting topic. I think anyone with power, including cops, can misuse it. That's the worst case scenario. I'm totally opposed to it, okay? But let's be honest, this is a sideshow, okay? That makes a certain kind of person feel virtuous for supporting. It's not about speech. Again, I would never challenge his speech rights in a million freaking years.
But see,
And so, again, Colin Kaepernick, social justice warrior, elitist, liberal, supposedly, falling back on his black roots, comes from money. And he's supposed to basically lecture us on social justice, on injustice happening to minorities, injustice happening to blacks, where he has had the privilege of being in a very uber wealthy upper class family and enjoying everything, being one of the few people in the world to be an NFL quarterback, of which there can only be 32 at a time. And he was at that time in the top 32, probably somewhere in the top 10 in a Super Bowl. And now this guy is taking a knee. Okay, fine, take the damn knee. Okay, at the flag. Okay, fine. I don't like it. A lot of people don't like it. But you know what? You can do it. But there are consequences to your actions, to your speech. Sure, you can say what you want, okay? But there's consequences, good and bad. That's the way it is. So you know what? And Colin Kaepernick, I mean, that's a douchebag. What do we care about? Okay, so he says some stuff. And plus he's getting millions and millions and millions of dollars from Nike for doing the advertisements for them. So yeah, he can come out at virtue signaling at its best from elitist, liberal wokesters. Basically, that's what's going on.
Tucker, and I'm giving you the perspective of other folks here, which is that for you, it seems like a sideshow, but for African Americans who are being jailed and killed disproportionately, it is not. It's not a curiosity. So, for example, 60.
I'm not. I just want to be totally clear because I can sometimes talk too fast to explain myself. I'm not saying. That's what I said. I was a police reporter. I think that people abuse their power, cops included. I don't think the issue is a sideshow. I'm just saying, like, this rich guy pretending to speak for all African Americans, like, spare me. You know what I mean?
No,
bingo.
I don't. And I'll tell
bingo,
you why.
bingo.
But who is going to speak for them? Is the media going to pay attention to a middle class guy, to a poor guy? They pay no attention whatsoever. And so people object to the way that Colin Kaepernick did it. Well, oh my God, he did it in the middle of the national anthem. Why did he do it in the middle of the national anthem? To get your attention. And the reality is that's the only thing that works when a rich guy who's a famous athlete does something in the middle of something that you're paying attention to. And so now we should have that conversation about police brutality against African Americans. Perfectly done by Colin Kaepernick.
Again, you take this thing. Now, I will give Cenk credit on this part that he says, you know what? Who is going to do it? Who's got the megaphone there? Of course, Colin Kaepernick has a megaphone. So he decides to do it, kneel at the Star Spangled Banner. But then, like you said, rich guy, rich black guy, okay, basically saying, hey, I'm talking for every black person, every minority group that's out there or whatever. That's just a bunch of crap. Colin Kaepernick took advantage of the situation, getting millions of dollars, decides to virtue signal, can get best of both worlds. Hey, I'm a good guy. Look at me. I'm looking out for the small guy. Where were you before, Colin Kaepernick? Where were you? When you were playing football, where the hell were you? Why didn't you go onto ESPN? You don't think that you, as one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL, if you went on ESPN and decided to say the same things about social justice or injustice going on that you thought, set up charities all across, talk about it, you don't think you can bring that forward? Of course you can. The power of the people within your sphere of influence in the football arena, the NFL going to Roger Goodell and said, we need this thing to be done. Going on the steps of a courthouse and talking about this. Running around the country if you can on your off days when you're not playing football or an off season, going to the Capitol building, making these speeches, doing it over there. Of course, it could be done, but you decide to go in this direction. So yes, you've got big people that have the megaphone. Okay, but the thing is, these are all hypocrites. That's what we're talking about. Colin Kaepernick is a freaking absolute hypocrite.
I mean, that's sort of a fair point in that there are symbolic figures who call attention to an important issue who haven't mastered the details. I get that. I mean, I don't think that Rosa Parks was like an expert on the Civil Rights Act, but that doesn't make her less powerful a symbol or less important a figure in American history. So I think that's a fair point. I guess what I'm saying is we haven't had that conversation about police brutality and race at all, because everyone's so freaking terrified to say anything that no one can talk about anything. You have to sort of just nod and be like, oh yeah, whatever the piety of the day is, I'm totally on board. Mr. Commissario, completely, I don't disagree in any way. I'm not gonna ask any questions because I'd be disobedient, you will punish me. It's like we don't have real conversations because people are terrified they're going to be punished if they have the conversation. So the first question I would ask is a database question, which shouldn't scare any of us. The facts should never scare us. And because we live in a large industrialized society that's most sophisticated in human history, we have a ton of data on everything. How many kids heard on seesaws last year? It's knowable. How many people, do you die younger from smoking menthol cigarettes than unfiltered? We know that. There's nothing we don't know, okay? So numbers don't tell the whole story, obviously, but they're a starting point for real conversation. So how common is this? Are white officers more likely to fatally shoot black suspects than black officers are? I don't know. If you even say that, it's like, I don't want to know. Stop with that spooky science stuff. I've made up my mind. The only way that you solve a problem is by honestly talking about it with the sum total of what you know about it. And that's exactly what we cannot do, because the purpose is not to fix the problem. It's for some people to feel like good people as opposed to all of them, and others to maintain their control over the population. So if we were having like a vigorous debate, like, oh my gosh, John Jay College of Criminology has actually studied this a lot, and here's what they found, and here's the 3 things we should do to fix it. Dude, I'm for that. That's the opposite of what we're having. We've got Nike ads. That won't fix it.
So, amazingly...
So anyways, that was pretty much the debate there. Once again, on this regard, I think they both got to make their points. But once again, it was Tucker controlling the game. And Cenk was allowing that to happen. Just like in a football game, right? You want to keep, if the offense is great, Kansas City Chiefs, right? You want to keep them off the field. Patrick Mahomes, you don't want him on the field. You want to do everything that you can. You want to, you want your offense to stay out there as long as it can. Same thing in the debates. He allowed Tucker to make his points, and then Tucker not only made his points, but then went and made even further points on that. At least allowing people to understand his position that may not be tuning into Fox News, may not be tuning into his show, may not be reading his books, got a chance to hear him, and maybe they said, It's not like what he's not what the Young Turks say about him, or he's not like what the left says about him, or he's not what the MSNBC or the Rachel Maddows of the world, or CNBC or NBC or CBS or whatever. He's not a demagogue. He's not this. He's not that. Maybe it changed some people's minds or perspectives a little bit. But if I was looking at this and it was my first time looking, I'd be saying, wow, that guy did make some points. Now, if you're a complete rabid leftist, lunatic, delusional person, nothing that Tucker says is going to make you change your mind. Like I said, there were some things that Cenk said that I definitely could have some agreement on, or partial agreement on, or at least work together to see where we have some further meeting on common ground. I'm willing to be open to that. And Cenk made some points in this debate, but I think overall, he was, as I said before in strategy, I think he was hoping that he could corner, Tucker into saying something that he could say, point back and say, gotcha. Oh, look at this. Oh, that was bigoted. That was racist. And they could play that over and over again on the Young Turks, or he could say, hey, I got him on this question. I got him on that. I'm sure he's going to say that this is what it was. Each camp's going to go back and say, hey, we cremated the other guy. I mean, that's what they do. That's what the spinmeisters do for each group. But like I said, it's in just controlling the clock, controlling the tempo, controlling the speech of the debate. You have to give it to Tucker Carlson. And you have to basically say that actually it was the softballs that were being thrown for him to hit it out of the park from Cenk Uygur. That's basically what was going on here. Cenk gave him the time, loaded up the, basically the ammunition, said, here it is, hit it out of the park. That's my opinion. That's my analysis. That's my reaction. I'm going to stick with it. Anyways, folks, we appreciate you taking time to watch part 6 of the debates between Cenk and Tucker. And you've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I've been your guest host. My name is Dr. Nasir. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel, smash that notification bell, like, share, and follow us. Down below, comment, share with us what you think, who you think won, points scored, points won. What do you think of my analysis? Love to hear from you. And I'll leave you with my final thought, which I always do, which is when you're right, you're right. And when you're left, you're wrong. We'll see you again next time, folks. Take care and stay safe.